All right, guys, I'm back. Finally had some time to make a video. And for today's content, we have some juicy stuff to talk about. So I'm going to be reacting to Sean Strickland's latest podcast. And I want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm not really trying to, I'm basically like neutral. When the whole Izzy Sean Strickland fight happened, I was like the most like ardent Sean Strickland fan or supporter. I wasn't really a fan. I knew he was a decent fighter. I didn't think he was going to win, but I knew the press conference was going to be good. So typically when it comes to fighters, I like chaotic guys. You know, I'm on the side of entertainment as opposed to these kind of stoic, really, really good fighters, but who are boring. So I tend to be, Sean Strickland is a very chaotic guy. He's very entertaining. But I have to say, one thing I probably hate more than anything is hypocrisy. And I know a lot of people are going to have different opinions on this whole situation because the situation, if we're all being honest, it's very gray. It's a weird situation. And I know some people will find and say, well, it's not the same situation. But it is a strange one. So Sean Strickland went out there. I think most of you guys know this. He went out there and they talked about the trauma, everything that happened at the last UFC press conference. And of course, Sean Strickland got into a fight with Driscus at the last event as well. So it's kind of like, it's the thing that everyone's talking about. Now, all of that was sparked because Driscus was making fun of Sean Strickland about, I guess, I don't know exactly what happened between Sean Strickland and his father, but I assume he was getting beat. It caused a lot of trauma, caused a lot of mental scarring, emotional damage, all that stuff. Now, of course, if someone has gone through that, we all feel for someone like that. That's horrible that someone did that to you. But at the same time, we also have to put a line and say, if you want to be the guy to go out and make fun of people, then you also have to make sure that your closet is as clean like the cleanest closet ever. Because if you don't have that, then it just makes you a hypocrite, right? Like if you go out there and you're making fun of Sean O'Malley and you're saying, well, look at his lifestyle, making fun of his family, making fun of Ian Gary and his family and their supposed lifestyles, and you go after Driscus Duplessis, right? You're going after him. And you're saying, well, his culture, I don't really know too much about that. That's a whole nother subject. But again, there's certain things that are okay in their culture that aren't okay over here. And I don't know if Sean's brain is big enough to comprehend that because, I mean, he is a very funny guy, but he also isn't like, he isn't very high IQ. Or maybe he does know, but he knows it's a good insult to throw out when you're over here, right? And so he was attacking everyone's families. And then he does this thing. Now, I'm going to quote. I could put it up on the screen, but I don't want to really do anything like that yet. But basically, he says, there's some things that are off limits. You don't really talk about a man's wife. You don't talk about a man's kids. And you don't, I assume, talk about a kid being abused. These things are all off limits once he crossed that. Now, if we're being honest here, there is no line. There literally is no line. Like there's no rules saying at a press conference you're only allowed to talk about these subjects and you can't talk about those. So there's no rule line, and there is no like some sort of gentleman's agreement where we all come together and we're like, well, we shouldn't have to tell you that you shouldn't be talking about people's families. Well, there's a lot of fighters that do that, like Conor McGregor, and yeah, people don't like him. He tends to. A lot of people don't like him, probably because of things like that. But at the same time, a lot of people ignore that stuff. And, it's this kind of hypocrisy. Like, if he's your favorite fighter, then it's no big deal. But if he isn't, then he's a horrible person. And there's probably nothing more I hate than that. And now Sean Strickland is doing this whole thing, well, oh, you can't talk about my family or you brought up my childhood. Now, again, if you're a high IQ person and you're going to have a podcast or something or whatever, you're going to put yourself out there on the internet. You don't get your stuff and put it out there for your enemies or future enemies to take that, and then they're going to use that as a weapon. They're going to turn your trauma and all the information that you put out there, and they're going to turn it into a dagger, and they're going to stab you with it. And that's what he did. He went out there and he talked about, oh, my dad, and And all these guys today are very soy and they tend to be like this and like that. And, you know, obviously a lot of us agree with that. But at the same time, when you are pushing, when you're creating a brand, and I know he's not doing this consciously, he's kind of doing this indirectly, like he's trying to be a role model to a lot of young guys. And that's why he's putting out like his journey out there to kind of say like, I overcame it and you can overcome yours too. And that's great. I mean, people need hope. They need someone to look up to, some sort of person to aspire to. I agree with that. But at the same time, what he's doing on this podcast is not going to help with that. It's not going to help with the brand. It's not going to help with him being a role model. And I know a lot of people are out there doing this whole defense and they're like, oh, well, you know, this is a good thing. Men need to open up and they need to release this. But when it comes to fighting in 2024 now, this is like a political arena. People will attack you in any way possible. They'll attack you obviously physically in the ring or outside the ring. They will attack you emotionally. They will use any information they have that usually most fighters put out there. And they'll grab that information and they'll use it to strangle you. So if you go out there and you talk about things that really hurt you, if you put it out there, they're going to grab that and they're going to use it against you, especially when you are doing it to other people. You can't say, well, I can pick up a stick and hit you with it, but the minute you hit me back, well, that was a line that we're not allowed to cross, and that's not okay. And because he did that, he went full chimp mode and attacked Driscus in a public area. That is criminal behavior. And it's not cool, right? If everyone did that, what kind of civilization would we be living in if everyone just started attacking each other? Well, someone looked at me wrong, or he, stepped on my shoe, or this guy did that. Like look at road rage, right? It's essentially that. Someone did something, they disrespected me in some slight way, and now I'm going to go out of my way to potentially, take this person out and probably end up in jail, and he was lucky enough that a lot of people were able to, argue his way out and say, oh, well, that's just how he is. And he's a comical guy. He's just trying to promote the fight. But if we're all being honest, this isn't promotion. This is a very I guess I wouldn't say broken, but he's a very hurt person. And he only has certain ways to cope. And I think we're realizing a lot of these fighters, essentially, if they weren't fighting in the ring, they would be probably in jail. And it's either one or the other. And a lot of fighters talk about this, like Mike Tyson. He comes and he brought that up, that if he wasn't in the ring boxing, then he would probably be some criminal, or he would probably be in the ground somewhere, because, he would have been very violent in society. And we're seeing that Sean is no different. He's a guy who just so happens to be in the right place to take his traumas out on other people. But when it comes to the ring, when it comes to fighting, it's not as simple as, just go beat the guy up. I mean, there's a whole mental fight before we even get into that. And, it's not good. I mean, we'll have to see what happens in this fight with Driscus, because if he were to lose, with everything going on, his own fans might turn on him. Like, they'll defend him now, but if he goes in there and gets knocked out by Driscus, if he gets defeated in a really brutal way, then people are going to look and they're going to say, well, he had that breakdown on the podcast. The whole reaction to him fighting Driscus is all of a sudden going to be like, this is a mentally ill guy that attacked the dude who was just bantering with him. And the whole situation is going to flip. It's going to go from, silly little clown Sean Strickland to the broken, sad clown. And I mean, we'll have to see, because if Sean could win and really comes out on this, I mean, he could be the strongest version of himself, right? He's overcome his greatest trauma, and he won. He's the champion. He defeated this great person, overcame his traumas, and he could be the best version. But if we're being real, most people usually tend to lose, and this could turn into, look at Tony Ferguson, right? I mean, he is probably another very hurt person who's using sports as a coping mechanism. And once you get to a certain age, you can't do it anymore. So if you've spent however many years in the sport and you haven't gotten over whatever it was, and you still need that one way to do it, then you end up like BJ Penn. You end up like maybe Hoist Gracie and some of these guys that stayed in the sport way too long. Not to mention, you got Volkanovski taking fights when he shouldn't. And he's saying, well, it's due to his like mental health issues. Same thing with Conor McGregor, saying the same thing about having mental issues, him not being right in the head unless he's training like 3 times a day. If anyone actually listens to his interviews, he has said that he trains at least 3 times a day. That is absolutely bizarre. I mean, that's definitely overtraining. I don't know if he trains Monday through Friday or if he trains every single day, which some of these guys could. But that is that is not good. And we'll see. We'll see with this whole situation. I mean, it could float any way possible, like the Volkanovski fight, because he lost that fight. Now people are looking back saying, oh, he was foolish. He shouldn't have taken that fight. Now he'll never get another fight with Islam, and and who knows, can he bounce back against Topuria, right? It's a huge thing. What happens in that fight with his fight with Topuria is going to suggest whether or not how much of a fool he was in his previous fight. If he wins, especially in like a KO in the first or second round, TKO in the third or fourth, people are going to say, oh yeah, he bounced back. I guess, he didn't take much damage. You know what, that whole loss, that was because of short notice. Islam isn't really that good. It changes the game, but the same thing is true of this fight. If Sean goes down, especially if he gets KO'd, if he gets TKO'd in the third, if he gets finished, which again there's a strong possibility of that. Dricus is very, very strong. He was able to take out Robert Whittaker in the, I think it was in the mid-second round. And Robert Whittaker is a very, very technical, strong guy, and he didn't hurt Dricus at any point. He walked through all of his strikes. He had good leg kicks. He was very good. He was going for a Darce. I mean, he's very, very dangerous. And can Sean Strickland put up with that? I mean, and if Sean loses this fight, everyone's perception of this whole situation is going to shift. And then we'll see where Sean is after that, because if he loses, I don't think he'll get a title shot. There's too many contenders. If he were to lose to Dricus, people would say, oh man, he needs to take time off. This whole mental thing really messed with him. It could be used as a cope for why he lost. But really, the whole situation could just flip depending on whether he wins or loses.